Welcome back, everybody. Today's video is going to be based on a growing concern I have, having coached numerous different people recently and seeing a common trend. So to start the video off, we're actually going to show you a gameplay clip, and the quiz time for you guys is, what do you think is wrong here? So without further ado, let's jump into that and I'll explain more later. Okay, everybody, we're 45 seconds into the game. This is a support 5-position Oracle. And now it's quiz time to see if you can detect what's wrong with this picture.
Wish fulfilled.
Okay. Now, did you get it? Well, there's actually a few things wrong with this picture, but the point of this video and what we're going to be talking about today is camera control. What we're going for here is that up until this point, we did not see his carry hero within his camera, and we did not see a single creep die, and we are now at the third creep wave. That is an alarming problem that I'm seeing in a lot of my coaching sessions, especially having to do with support players. So I would consider this an egregious offense in the one that we just currently watched, because for this period of time, we didn't even see what was going on in the lane. Now, there's a bonus lesson to be gained from each of the clips that I'm going to be showing you guys. This, on a scale of 1 to 10, is 10 out of 10 bad. We didn't even look at the lane. But another thing of note for you support players out there, as you're going to see, he's actually going to notice that his small camp is not there. And he's going to spend the majority of the next 10 to 15 seconds trying to deward it. This is a big no-no because you do not need to deward this camp until 2 minutes in. You can wait until about 1:45 to walk over here, get the deward, and be able to get the pull-off. And the reason why this is so important is because if you're not laning, your carry is effectively laning 1v2, probably losing out in the CS, probably losing out in the resource battle. So the biggest fundamental takeaway from this exact example outside of the camera usage itself is if you are a support, make it your mission to be in lane for the first creep wave at all, and make sure you are as involved in the lane as possible until 1:45. Feel free to check and see if the small camp is here at 1:10 in case you want to pull it, but other than that, please do not leave the lane unless absolutely necessary. A nice rule of thumb from this first example is that if I'm watching the replay from your player perspective and I don't know what's going on in the lane with nothing else distracting me, not me having to press buttons, then how the hell are you supposed to know what's actually going on in your lane? Okay, moving on to clip number 2. On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say this is like a 6 or 7 offense. But what we're going to see here is actually a lower MMR support than in the previous example, but his camera movement's going to be a little bit better. So we're at about 4:20 into the game, Blaze it, and we're going to see that he's pulling. And what you're going to notice while he's pulling is he's actually going to move his camera, checking over at his lane a little bit, see where his carry is. You can kind of see the pull camp in his camera. There's a lot of relevant things that are in his view, right? But now we're going to get to the point where about 5 minutes in, this is when people start moving around the lane a lot. But now we're going to fast forward a little bit. And what you will have noticed in the last minute and a half of his camera work is that he has not looked in any other lane on the map. And this is really important as a support because around 5 minutes is when heroes start to go through the twin gate, mids start to rotate as well, people are getting their level 6s potentially, and especially the 6-minute rune. Now, it's one thing to talk about support players not even contesting the 6-minute rune. I would say it's usually very important, if possible, to leave your lane and try to contest the 6-minute rune. But if you're not able to do that, or if you don't think it's the best use of your time in any given game, you should at least be monitoring what's happening mid. So what's going to happen here is we're not going to do that, right? We're going to see that his camera movement does not leave his lane. It's actually moving around a lot in his current lane. But here's what happens sometimes when this is what you do, right? We're going to try to make a play on this Pudge, and wham! There's an Invis rune Razor from the 6-minute rune that's going to come to their lane and get a double kill. And the reason why, you know, a lot of people would watch this or be in this situation and be like, unlucky. Enemy mid got an Invis rune, and we died to it. However, if you're a support player and you're looking at other lanes, let's talk about like the relevance of the information that we could have seen if we did that. So say we're at about 5:35 and we look mid. We would see that Lina has no bottle charges, Kind of sus that he's got 4 clarities, but whatever. And he's very low health and very low mana. So what that means, if you see this information, is that your mid is very unlikely to be getting the rune. And if he does go for the rune, he's probably just going to die. So you say you check there and you notice that. Fantastic. If we check at any other point in the next 30 seconds, what we're going to see is that the Lina is going to get ganked by the Spear Breaker. And he's going to be forced to retreat. And then we're going to see that our mid, who's really low health and mana, is going to be jungling a camp. So during this entire time, if we had checked, we would see that our mid laner has really low resources. What does this imply? When your other lanes have low resources, what that means is that they are not applying any pressure. And when there's no pressure on the opponent, what that means is that they are allowed to do whatever they want, right? That means that the enemy mid could have free farm in his lane, and he's choosing to do something else, which means he almost certainly got the rune because it's 6 minutes in. And there's a lot of runes that kill us. And he's almost certainly not mid, because why would a mid laner be jungling when they could be freely farming the lane that they're in and perhaps pushing the tower? These are the type of reasons why we want to check other lanes. And the biggest emphasis of this video is there is a plethora of things to be looking for on the map, whether that's in the laning phase, and we're looking simply at the creep wave to see where the aggro is, where the lane equilibrium is, what the resource battle is, or whether or not it's in the mid game or like right after the laning stage ends here, and we want to have a better understanding of, are people going to be rotating, who's winning their lanes, what's likely going to happen going into this portion of the game. And by that happening, we end up getting wham bamboozled by this Razor and feeding a double kill. All of which, if a support's looking around the map, that is a large role for you in the game as a support, is to be the information gatherer and to make sure that you do your best to kind of keep track of what's going on in the game. And this is so important because for supports, you're not CSing as often. You don't have as much mechanically demanding roles in the laning phase. You're more so walking around. So try to find time between pulls, walking from place to place, to look around the map, especially starting around the 5 minutes. I want to give a quick disclaimer. I know there's a lot of you in the YouTube channel who do give comments like this. Comments such as, even if I communicate to my sniper that the Razor's missing and he feeds, then he's just going to stay there anyways and die. And I would like to note that I'm tired of hearing this sort of mentality. Clearly, he wasn't aware that this was happening either, and he went and died with the sniper. He could have easily communicated, try to pull, tell the sniper to be careful, and if the sniper dies anyway, there's nothing he can do about it. But there was a lot that he could have done to prevent from exactly what happened here from happening. In this third clip, we actually have a relatively high MMR support player sitting in the high 5K range. And I would consider this like a 2 to 3 out of 10 in terms of the egregiousness of this offense of not moving your camera around and checking what's going on. And this one actually underlies in a core mentality-based problem. So what you're going to see here is that he's undying with a carry Morphling on his team. He's going to be the melee frontlining support in the lane, and he's going to try to bully this offlane Venge. So what you're going to see is that he's going to walk at the Venge. And what he told me in the coaching session was that he assumed, based on what was happening and what's happened in his past games, that the lane was going to basically stay static right here. And that if he zones the Venge, then the Morphling's going to get every last hit, he's going to get every deny, and the lane's just going to sit right in front of his tower, and all is dandy. So what happens here is he makes that assumption. Now, what happens is the Morphling does not do that. The Morphling actually allows the creeps to go into tower range, and then the lane is going to push. But what you see here is that he's continuing to run at the Venge, effectively zoning her, thinking that that's the best play, because he thinks that the creeps are dying. But what you'll notice in his camera work is that he never once does this to check and see what's happening in the lane. If he were to check and see what's happening in the lane, he would have zoned Venge to about this distance, turned around and start denying this melee creep right here that's half HP. Because of the fact that the lane is pushing, and he wants to make sure that it does not push any further than it has to. But because he does not do that, what ends up happening is he turns around, he's like, oh, shit, the lane's like, you know, pushing all the way up here. And now the lane is all the way up here, and there's nothing he can really do about it at this point. He could have taken a complete creep out of the picture. But the biggest thing about the mentality issue here is, for some reason, there's this problem in the Dota scene, the Dota community, where people tend to complain about their teammates a lot. I'm not saying that this guy is doing that, but they complain about their teammates a lot and talk about them being really bad. But then at the same time, they assume they're going to make the right play. This is like a really common contradictory mindset that I hear in the Dota community. And what my advice here is that I want you guys to make an assumption because that's how the brain works. It is a pattern recognition system. You notice that the beginning of the lane meets like this most of the time. That's what happens, and you're making an assumption based on pattern recognition. Totally healthy thing to do, guys. But there needs to be a degree of checking your assumptions and not just operating blindly. So in the first two examples, we saw people, like in the first one, the guy didn't even check the lane for the first minute and a half. So much can happen in the lane in a minute and a half, and he has no idea what it is. In the second example, he was all over the lane in terms of his camera, but he had no idea what was going on the map. A lot of heroes can move around the map. A lot of levels, a lot of trades, a lot of kills can happen in 2 minutes of not checking the map. But in the laning phase, lane equilibrium can shift on a dime, right? Heroes can do weird creep aggro tricks. People can use nukes that push the wave. People can accidentally take the wave into the tower. Creep wave equilibrium can shift almost instantly. So what that means is when in regards to creep equilibrium, it is super important to check it as often as possible. And this is a super important skill for supports, because the move that you're supposed to make, whether that's utilizing a pull, whether that's bullying the opponent, whether that's creep aggroing for your teammate, whether that's diving them under tower, all of those decisions are based on what the creep equilibrium is doing at any given moment. If you're not updating your knowledge on a system that can significantly change in a short period of time, then you are not giving yourself the information that is necessary to make the right decisions. Now, I know this was a bit of a short video, and the entire concept of this video that I'm noticing amongst support players, especially, this does apply to other roles, but mainly supports, is that you guys are not giving yourself the information necessary to make the right decisions. So wherever you are on this spectrum of, do you never move your camera around? Do you move your camera in lane, but you don't really check other lanes? Do you not move your camera to constantly check things? We're talking about the first two players were around the 1 to 3K bracket, and the third player was almost 6K, and so he's in the lower mortal bracket. So we have different degrees of this problem and different MMRs of players. This is a very important part of Dota for support players to be gathering information and communicating it. It is probably the most impact that you can have, especially in the first 6 to 10 minutes of the game, because you're usually pulling or playing on the side of the lane while your cores are busy CSing and really concerned about their positioning. So being able to use your mental focus and power to communicate to them is going to be one of the highest impacts that you can have in the game as a support in the laning stage. So I hope you guys learned something. Feel free to post in the comments if there's further questions, further examples that you would like to see on a subject like this. I don't often make videos for supports, but I really saw this as a common trend, and I'm hoping to kind of nip it in the bud and get people working on their camera movement, making sure they're checking around the map, scanning for more information. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you guys in the next video.